I got to hand it to Reate for coming out of the woodwork with something like this. The infamous Reate gravity knife. What is going on with this thing? Carter here with Edge Mindset. Thank you for joining me. We're going to be taking a look at this EXO-m from Reate. This is the gravity knife that everybody has been freaking out about for the past year, I think. About a year ago when these came out on the scene, everybody was going off about how illegal these are and all these things, and I never jumped on one, but I did now. So I've got one, and it's pretty cool. We're going to talk about it, what I like, what I don't like, some improvements I think that could be made to this knife, because I think they definitely can be, particularly with the lockup, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But before we begin, what is this thing? It came out of left field, even though gravity knives are not anything new. In fact, they are quite old. I almost picked up a vintage World War something paratrooper gravity knife, something like that. I forget the name of it. But this design, gravity knives, have been around for a very long time. And they're actually have been very highly illegal for a very long time, which is kind of funny because, you know, it's pretty benign, right? There's no force, there's no springs, there's no ballistics. It just kind of falls out and opens up, and that's it. But this is illegal in a lot of places by name, as well as the fact that this one features a dagger ground blade, which is illegal in a lot of places. Luckily, in my state where I reside, I have zero restrictions on anything. I can carry, own anything that I want, including a dagger-bladed gravity knife. So check your local laws if you're wanting to pick one of these up. That's up to you on kind of what you do there. But it can affect how good of a day you have if you get in trouble with one of these. I certainly don't want that to happen. So this is made by Reate overseas in China. It has some strange branding on it. If anybody can kind of let me in on some of this. Exoskeleton, which is where the EXO-m comes from, and then they've got the little scorpion thing. Same thing is on the karambit. What is that one called? The EXO-K? Yeah, EXO-K, K for karambit. EXO-m for, I don't know. I don't know what the M stands for. I believe the M designates the version with the lock and the pocket clip, but I'm not sure actually what M stands for. Manual safety? I don't know. But I don't know why Reate went with this weird scorpion branding. Looks very gas station-y to me. Luckily, it's hidden in here and you can't really see it. Let's do specs real quick. Overall blade length, or the blade length, or just the length of the blade, as I'm eating up time, trying to grab my tape measure here, 3 1/4. Overall length is 7 3/4. So this has the same issue with OTF automatic knives. I guess I'm done with this. In the fact that the efficiency of handle to blade is not great. And it just has to do with the construction. And I actually want to point this out, even though it's not really directly related to the video. I get a lot of comments on OTFs where people say, I like OTFs, I just don't like how short the blade is to how long the handle is. And unfortunately, it's somewhat of a necessity. And you can really see that here, because if you open this up, and this in high level is the same as an OTF, you can see how the bottom of the tang is all the way down here. And that's because you need all of this to house the mechanism and the stop pins and all those things. Same with this OTF. If you could see inside here, the bottom of the tang is actually right here. Then you've got the stop pin that the spring connects to pull it down. So you've got almost an inch of blade hidden in here that affect how deep this thing can go down. And in this case, you've got this pivot down here, and then you've got the tang on top. And so this is all the blade that you could actually fit in this handle. Same situation going on here. You've got this pocket clip coming through. You've got the mechanism. So it kind of limits how long the blade can be inside that handle. So that's where that comes from. Let's do a size comparison just while we have these two out here. So quite a bit smaller than the Glycon from Microtech. And if you compare it to the Para 2, a little bit smaller than the Para 2. However, the blade lengths are almost identical. You just have even more handle on the Para 2. So good example, right? Everybody loves the Para 2, but if you do handle to blade comparison, the Para 2 actually doesn't stack up that well. And it has this choil in here cutting length is almost exact. So between these two, despite this having the limitation of the mechanism, you get the same amount of cutting length, and the overall length is a lot shorter. So when you compare it that way, it's actually a pretty dang good efficiency ratio on the blade to handle. Titanium housing right here. All of this is titanium. This one has this cool Burl micarta inlays. You can get all different kinds of inlays. You can get tactical black everywhere, different blade shapes, different blade finishes. This one is in Elmax, which I love Elmax. It's tried, it's true. I've used it a lot. This version has the pocket clip, and they're able to do the pocket clip. So the first version of this didn't have a pocket clip and it didn't have a lock. So it relied on you holding the knife to keep the blade in place and locked. But now they have this locking mechanism, which keeps this closed, keeps the blade locked in the open and closed position. So now you can actually carry this thing, which is a huge step forward and makes this a lot more fun to have. Although a lot of states you can't legally carry it anyways, but for those that can, it's really, really cool. Action on this thing is tough to quantify. Let's talk about the action. It's hard to quantify because it's so unique. So on one hand, it's the best action ever, right? Because it's cool to slide this thing in and out of here, and you get better at it and you get faster at it. You can kind of shoot it out and lock it, fidget with it, that kind of stuff. However, it doesn't follow your traditional, bearings, flipper type stuff, right? It's kind of its own unique. Oh, by the way, both of these knives are made by Reate. That's kind of cool. So it's kind of unique, but it is fun for that reason. Like, it is so cool. I would recommend everybody just have one of these because it's so much fun to just manipulate this thing and slide it out. And it's got that cool sound as well. Ergonomics are fine. It's difficult with this as well as OTFs. You're essentially dealing with a glorified rectangle. It's just a matter of what sort of little flourishes you can put on it, what sort of chamfering you can put on it. It's got jimping on the back here. It's got a little bit of an attempt of a choil, some jimping down here, which is really, really nice. It does give you a good, solid grip on this thing, especially in the saber grip right there. Hammer grip is good as well. And the good thing about having a rectangle handle is it kind of isn't great in any hand position, but it works okay in every hand position, if that makes sense. So it's not outstanding in any sort of grip, but they're all the same. So all the grip choices work the same and feel just as good as any others. Other than that, there's really not that much to talk about with ergos. It's basically a rectangle. You've got some chamfering on the edges here to make it a little bit more comfortable. So there's not hot spots per se. It's just not anything outstanding in terms of ergos. Now let's talk about lockup. So when you actually lock this knife, it locks up pretty tight. You can hear a little bit of rattling, the blade inside, and this moves ever so slightly. But in the open position, there's actually a good amount of wiggle. It's not too bad, but there is some wiggle there. But unlike an OTF knife, which it's difficult not to have any blade play on an OTF knife, automatic like that, this one I feel they could have fixed that. So here's the stop pin. It's the same on both sides. It's removable, by the way. And then that interfaces with this little shoulder on the top piece here. And that's where you kind of put your pressure on and it holds this blade in place. This is not actually all that tight. I would like to see them reduce the measurements between these two so that when you get this out of the box, it would be cool if this was actually, you almost had to snap it in place for the first however many openings and closing, right? Because this is just so tight right here that it actually kind of forms together and then creates pressure, pushing this up at the top and keeping everything nice and tight. It's just not the case here. In fact, you don't even feel it come in contact with that at all. So I think that's something they could fix. They could also maybe do something with some rubber grommets. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I think there's a way for them to reduce the amount of blade play in this particular knife just with how this mechanism works. I would like to see that, but it's not a deal breaker. It's plenty good. It's very stout. These are huge locking lugs that are shouldering onto the frame and onto this top locking frame piece as well. So in terms of actual lockup strength, this, I don't see how this would really fail. The only way I could see this failing is if you didn't lock it and you put enough force inward that it actually popped this handle up. But I don't really see that happening with how that's shouldered. But if you have this in the locked position and if you're applying pressure onto this thing, I don't see how this lock could fail. One of the benefits of OTFs, out the front knives, is even if that lock does fail, the blade's coming in the handle, not on your fingers. Yes, it'll render the knife useless, but it's not chopping your fingers off. Something like this, if you were using this and something put force on the back and it closed on you, it could cause some damage, incapacitate your hands, and it wouldn't be a good thing. But with OTF knives, it won't happen. It'll just go into the handle just like it's in the closed position. So that is one benefit of out the front knives like that. So value, pretty good value. I think Elmax steel, titanium frame, micarta inlays. These are sub $300. They're made really, really well. I think $278. You can get them cheaper on the secondary market, just like usual. But these are really fun. I'm debating picking up one of the tactical black versions. That one would be really, really sweet. So the real question, though, is it cool? Yes, it is. It is cool. It is, on the coolometer, I would give it a 7 out of 10 in terms of being cool. It's a really cool concept. I got to hand it to Reate for coming out of the woodwork with something like this, a gravity knife. Nobody has attempted a gravity knife on like a major production scale in a long, long time. It was one of those no-no knives that people just didn't think anybody really wanted, I guess. And the legality issues, the undeserved legality issues, I think pushed it even further so that nobody really wanted to touch this type of knife. But Reate was like, we'll do it. We'll make a gravity knife. And it's been wildly successful. These things are hard to come by. They sell out quick. And they're not new. They've been out for like a year. Not necessarily this version, but Reate's gravity knife, the EXO, has been out for a long time. And they still sell out super, super fast. You can get this in the full-size version. They also have a mini version, which I'd be interested in kind of trying out. But man, I don't really consider this one to be a large. This is about normal size to me, so I don't know if I would like the mini. Might be a little bit too small, but let me know down below. Can you carry and use gravity knives where you live, and would you ever pick one of these up? Second question, double bonus round. Second question: out of these two, automatic OTF and then a gravity knife, which one would you choose? Let me know down below. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Catch you guys.